Hi everyone. I want to speak about what may be a touchy subject today, but I'd like you to hear me out in the hopes that it will help support you, and maybe if you need to share this video with someone who cares about you or you care about them. I was out this afternoon to get my power wheelchair repaired. Someone who walked by me said to me he would rather die than drive around in a power wheelchair. It actually brought me back to 2009. In June of 2009, the cartilage in both of my hips had torn, and I had a double hip surgery. The goal was that my hips would be repaired and I would get 15 more years out of them before needing replacements. In reality, the right hip came undone after 5 days and the left hip retore after 7 weeks. I wasn't even healed from having the surgery when I was dealing with the same issues all over again. But throughout this time period, I was really resisting having a power wheelchair. I just did not want to have to need it. In some ways, I saw it as someone who's ill, and sickly. I didn't get that you may have a physical handicap and need help walking, but are otherwise okay. So I held off getting a wheelchair until I really couldn't walk with 2 crutches anymore. My last few weeks of walking was just taking steps that were 3 to 4 inches or maybe 10 to 12 centimeters long. And of course, when you're walking with that small of a stride, it takes you forever to do absolutely anything. So at the point when I was offered a power wheelchair, I had really reached the point where walking on my own just wasn't going to happen, and I needed an alternative option. The reality is that I got my life back when I started using the power wheelchair. What I mean by this is I hadn't been able to grocery shop for at least 2 years prior to this. Suddenly I could go around the stores and do my own grocery shopping. I could get around the house and easily make it to the toilet when I needed to pee or have a bowel movement. If I wanted to go out for a drive, I wasn't stuck inside anymore. What I want to suggest to you is that a wheelchair is a tool for life. It may not be the ideal situation, but when there's not another option, it's a key or a tool to have your independence back. I've experienced the friends that couldn't get past me using a power wheelchair and didn't really see me but saw the wheelchair and were completely unsure of how to react and step back away from my life. I want to encourage you to still treat people who are in a wheelchair as people. You don't automatically need to baby them, or coddle might be another word. The way to be helpful would be opening or holding a door for someone to get through. Another way might be if you see someone that's stuck in a snowdrift, to help them get free. If you see someone in their wheelchair stopped on the side of the road and they can't move, it would be appropriate to pull over and offer if you could help them. The help that you could give may very well only be contacting their mobility store to trigger maintenance, but it would get the ball rolling and ultimately we get the person out of the situation that they're presently in. It's a different type of help that someone needs who's relying on a power wheelchair. I've been criticized different times for driving on the side of the road, and not everyone really gets it. When you're driving on the city sidewalk, it's like continually driving on train tracks. It's literally bump after bump after bump. And when you have soft tissue pain in your body, it's literally like being assaulted, to where you're so physically exhausted that there's no quality of life left. So what I tend to do is check on a block by block basis when I'm driving on the side of the road if there's cars that are going to need to pass me, and I wait for them to drive by me. Or I'll duck into a driveway so the car can go back past me and then get back on the side of the road to continue driving. I do a fair amount of city driving. I take my wheelchair out to physiotherapy 5 times a week, and it's a 4-kilometer or 2.5 mile drive to the facility where I use. So I'm used to having to deal with traffic. You don't want to be using the side of the road if there's so many cars on the road that it's just not safe. But for the occasional car going by you, waiting before you start the next block seems to work well for me. As well, I go at a time of day when traffic is not as heavy, and I've been very intentional about doing this. I wanted to address this for car drivers that really may not get it. They see someone on the side of the road, and I can understand an appreciation for not wanting to, just smacking into them. But there's more than a person being on the side of the road. There's usually a story that goes behind it, such as with me and the pain of constantly driving over the crack on sidewalks. So what there's to learn from this is that a wheelchair is a tool. It's the same as a person driving a car, but when there's not the option to walk for whatever reason. I've had people criticize me for not being completely dependent on a wheelchair and not understand how I can take 2 or 3 steps. There are people who use power wheelchairs but at least can get out of them to sit on their favorite sofa or chair, or when you use the toilet, for example. Not everyone who relies on a wheelchair is completely that's it, and they're not going to move without the wheelchair. There are some people who can take just a few steps, like myself, to get out of it and into something that's much more comfortable or makes life a little bit more normal. For me, the wheelchair is mobility. It fits a need in my life. I wouldn't wish it on anyone, but if you have the option to go watch the fireworks, and that's how you're going to get to see fireworks, then it's sure a whole lot better than staying home and hearing the bangs that go along with fireworks, but not being able to take part. I think that's what people can relate to. They may not understand someone being on the side of the road, but a community activity certainly is something that everyone would want to engage in, as long as they're able to do so and have the time and resources. I hope this is of some help. I know it's a touchy topic, and I expect other people have had very strong feelings over a power wheelchair not really wanting it to be part of their life. If you are on the fence and it's been suggested to you, there's usually the option to test drive one and get a feel for it. An occupational therapist took me out and gave me driving lessons with a power wheelchair when I first got it. And she told me that for me to recommend you receive government funding, you must agree to do your own grocery shopping and you're actually using this tool. I can't justify recommending it and then it just sitting in the corner gathering dust. About 8 weeks after I got my power wheelchair, I had to have the first service call. I popped a tire. And when they came to repair it, the technician said, "I'm just amazed at how much you're using it." He said there's a very hard time some people have getting used to the idea of having a power wheelchair. It very well can be a frustrating start, like you're driving into walls and beds and furniture. The driving does improve with time. There are a few options that can be done to make the wheelchair respond differently if you're just frustrated with it and want it to handle a different way. You need to speak up and articulate what it is that you're struggling with. There's been different times where I've gone to a counselor to help them have me organize my thoughts before going to my family doctor for actual help. And it's not that my family doctor wouldn't help me and wouldn't help me figure out how to express myself, but that so much was going on all at the same time that I needed someone to help me clear my mind and be organized in who I was asking for what help. And this is where I want to leave the video at. If you're someone that's really struggling, there are some very caring people in the world. Even if you don't have money for a counselor, there may be a few options exist in your community where one can be provided to get you some support and help you through a transition from living life, being able to walk and get around and do your errands, to having had a sudden accident and now relying on a wheelchair. And if you need it, I thoroughly encourage you to follow through and pursue the most that you're able to do with this life. It happens to be a process. You're probably going to get as frustrated as I have been getting used to this new wheelchair, but you'll get through it, and in the bigger picture, it will help your life and give you a better quality of life and enjoyment out of life. I want to thank you for this time together today. Bye for now.